Hey guys, my name is Jason with Mount Baker Mining and Metals, and on today's video, we're in Bisbee, Arizona, and we're gonna go take a tour of the historic Copper Queen mine. Here we go. Oh, look at that, rails and everything. Copper Queen mine portal.
If you add up all the tunnels underneath Bisbee, there's about 2,400 miles of track. Now we're going to use about a half mile of this one. There's 7 levels in this mine. They start up high up there. There's 4 levels above us and 2 levels below us, and they're all separated by about 100 feet of rock. We're going to stay on this level. We're not going up and we're not going down. We're just going to hook back into the mountain back that way. Now when you hear the brass bell on my motor ring, the next thing that's going to happen is the train's going to move. If it jerks a little bit, I apologize in advance. Again, if you drop your hard hat, don't worry about it. We've got extras in the mine. If your lights go out, we've got extras in the mine. If you drop anything else, we'll just trust Sean to pick it up and bring it to us. Feel free to take all the pictures that you want while we're underground. There's no restrictions on photography, but I'd only ask that you not take any pictures of me because I've got a couple warrants and I need to work for the rest of the weekend. Everybody ready to go? Sedimentary limestone rock. Now you're going to see a bunch of black material on it. Looks kind of like coal. It's actually soot from fires. This mine opened in 1877, but it closed in 1943. All the other mines in town stayed open until 1975. Now those other mines would send their fire crews into this tunnel and drag a bunch of these old timbers in behind them and pour diesel oil on them and light them on fire, and those guys had to fight their way out of the mine. That's how they trained.
Oh,
Did you have fires underground? Sure. Prior to 1920, folks, their only source of light down here were candles. So they had open flame and timber and grease and oil and dynamite. You know, what could go wrong? So take a look ahead of us. You're going to see a kind of a dull red light up there. Now it's kind of insignificant to us. It's just an exit light. But the original opening to this mine started up high on the mountain up there, and it was an incline shaft. And it went down 700 feet at about a 45-degree angle. When we get to that red light up there, I can't stop there because it's on a curve. But I will slow the train down, and as we go around that curve, that's where this tunnel intersects with that incline shaft. So as we go around that turn, look down and to your left, and you can see down another 100 feet to one of the levels down below us. Before we can move, folks, I need to know, is everyone comfortable underground?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so we're going up. If you can, everybody, lean to your right or your left and look forward to the train. Look way down there, you're gonna see a couple of green lights. Do you see them?
Yes.
You see that second green light way down there?
Yes.
That's the light at the end of the tunnel. The reason this tour is only 14 minutes.
I've been looking for it all this time.
We're right about 400 feet underground right now. If y'all step off on this side of the train and come upstairs with me, we'll take a look at this stope.
Big old timbers. Going up to look at the stope here.
This used to be solid rock. It's all been blasted out of here. What was it? Why did they come in here and tear out all this rock but leave all the rest of it standing? If you guys put your lights down for a minute and watch where mine goes, I'll show you why they were here. Look up there on the wall, that bluish green rock.
Oh, yeah.
That's malachite and azurite, folks. That's raw copper right there, and that's what all this was. There's about 1,000 of these stopes underneath the town of Bisbee. And this kind of rock, you're not going to get on a vein of what you're looking for and follow that vein out like you might do in a granite mine, like a silver mine or something like that. In sedimentary rock, what you're looking for is going to be in deposits. There might be some in this part of the mountain and some over here and some back over here. The trick is to find those deposits, and you do that by core drilling. And once you find where that's at, then you can tell the miners, all right, cut a total 700 feet in that direction, and then they're gonna mine up underneath that deposit and mine up into it and let that rock fall. So, there would have only been 2 men working in here, 2 guys on day shift and 2 guys on night shift. And from 1877 to 1920, their only source of light would have been 2 candles burning in here. Now, they didn't have any machinery, and they only ran 2 8-hour shifts, folks. I want to make that clear. The reason for that, instead of running 3 shifts, is the last thing that you do at the end of your shift is light the fuses on your dynamite. Once that dynamite burns, you got to get everybody out of the mine for a couple hours and let the ventilation system carry that nitroglycerin gas out. You don't want to breathe that stuff. I have it. It gives you like the worst headache you've ever had. But in the early days, there's your first drill steel, folks. Just a cold chisel powered by a 4-pound single jack. And the object is not to chip the rock off the walls. The object is to dig holes and pack them with dynamite and blow that rock down. And they would start out these dynamite holes by striking that steel and give it a quarter of a turn, strike it and turn it, you strike it and turn it. You have to keep turning it or it'll get stuck. Once you get back in there a couple of inches, that's called collaring the hole. Once you get the hole collared, you can speed it up by using a longer drill steel, and you're going to graduate to a 12-pound double jack. Now this becomes a 2-man job at this point. One guy, probably the younger one, right? is going to have to stand here and twist his steel while his partner goes after it with a 12-pound hammer in the dark. That's how they did it. Nowadays they'd call that trust issues, brothers. Now, I want to make something kind of clear. This mine is still owned by Freeport-McMoRan. It's an international mining company. They own all the mines in this town, even though they haven't mined here since 1975. They haven't earned a dime by mining in Bisbee. But they're still here, and they're still very active in our community in a positive way. They're involved in just about everything. They're scouting and Little League and our elderly programs. I volunteer with a couple of veterans associations, and they help us out a lot too. So it sounds like I'm a company man, huh? Well, I'm not. None of us are. We're all a bunch of retired guys that do this part-time, minimum wage. We're city employees, and we do it just because it's cool. You know, and we also understand that it's very vital American history that's starting to go away. Underground mining is starting to go away. Everybody's kind of going to pit mines now. Mm-hmm. This is what populated the West, folks. It's what brought the railroads out west. It wasn't cattle. They brought the cattle out here to feed the miners. Mm-hmm. So the company leases this mine to the city for $1 a year so we can hold these tours and try to keep this alive. But under the terms of that lease, we have to maintain this mine to company standards and OSHA standards and Bureau mines. We don't deal with MSHA anymore because we're not mining. But we do have to do some blasting down here, and we get to do it. It's a hoot, man. If you ever get the opportunity to legally blow something up, I recommend it. So about 1920, they did away with carbide lamps and the candles, and they brought these pneumatic tools down here and electric lights and electric motors to pull these cars with. But this is called a Gardner Denver pneumatic drill. It's not a jackhammer, folks. It's just a drill. Did y'all see that pipe running along the tracks down there? Yeah. That carried compressed air. Now you can take a flexible hose off that pipe and screw it on right here, and that's what turns the worm gears and pushes that drill and the steel into the mountain. But in the early days, they couldn't figure out why everybody all of a sudden started getting tuberculosis. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like the disease of the day back then around the turn of the 20th century, worldwide. And they were treating for tuberculosis, yes. Somebody got a question back there? Oh, no, you're filming, I'm sorry. It turns out it wasn't tuberculosis, folks. It was these drills stirring up the silica in this rock. Silica is glass in its basic form, right? You stir that up into a dust cloud, it was cutting these guys' lungs up. So the company that manufactures these drills, they modified them. A couple of modifications to them. First of all, they hollowed out that drill steel all the way through the end of the Timken bit, and they added a water jacket to the drill itself. You can screw a water hose on right here and push water all the way through the end of that drill steel, and that washes out the dust. It also cools your drill bit, but most importantly, it washes out that silica. If you have to timber up a stope, now you guys saw some timbers holding up that crosscut down there. Timbering a stope like this is a little different. If you were working in an area like this that was unstable, they call it heavy ground, and you have to hold the mountain up off of you, you're going to build these structures right here. If I can go there. This is called a square set. All this wood is pre-cut on the surface of the wood mill, and it comes down as a kit. And you can see how it's put together on the corners up there. That's so you can get another one of these kits and bring it right here and build it right onto this one, or onto that side, or onto that side, or onto the top. And you're going to fill this stope with them. You're going to build it all the way up to the back of the mine. In the mine, the top is called the back, and the sides are called the ribs. You're going to build it all the way up to the back and wedge it in nice and tight with sledgehammers and wooden wedges, and then this becomes your workspace. You're going to get air and water back here for your machine. You're going to mount a machine back here and spend the rest of your day drilling 26 holes, 7 feet deep back in this rock in a particular pattern, about an 8 by 8 foot pattern. And then you're going to pack them with about 220 sticks of dynamite. Awesome. And then cut your fuses so you have 22 separate explosions, about a second apart. Once you get your fuses lit, you're going to walk off in one direction, your partner's going to go in another direction. Get around a corner or behind something heavy, but you both have to stay close enough to it that you count all the explosions accurately. So if you load at 22 and you only count 21, you got a problem. But we're gonna talk more about that at the next stop. I've got a blast face for you back there. Does anybody have any questions? That was all in one breath.
How long would it have taken to scope out this area?
This entire stope,
Yeah, this one here.
they worked in here for 13 years.
In this space.
Yes.
Cavity. Interesting.
Yeah, remember, there would have been just two guys in here.
Right?
Yeah, and let me touch on this for a minute too. Does everybody understand the natural fact that the deeper you go in the ground, the hotter it gets? It's a natural fact. We're a volcanic planet, right? Now, it's not hot in here because we're a mile-high city and we're up on top of a mountain. We're only 400 feet deep. A couple of miles from here is the Campbell Shaft. Those guys were working about 4,000 feet down. It was over 100 degrees all the time, and it rained hot water on them constantly. See, as the groundwater moves down through this rock, it's very porous rock. Even though as hard as it is, that water's going to settle down through it, and the hotter the rock gets, the hotter the water's going to get. Is that a little insult to that injury, and that there's a lot of sulfur in this rock too. So by the time it got down to them, it was so acidic it blistered their skin. So they worked in their underwear and they coated themselves in Vaseline to keep it off. So who wants to work in conditions like that? Yes, sir, you had a
What's the
question?
rumbling sound?
I'm glad you asked because I can't hear it, and so I always forget to mention I don't have that frequency anymore. That's that fan up on top of the mountain that's blowing air down here. You felt that breeze coming up?
Yeah.
There's a 50 horsepower fan up on top of the mountain and it's blowing fresh air down here. It's coming in through that hole right above me up there. That's why I had to open that wooden door. In the mines, I see all these tunnels interconnected, they go in all these different directions. So when you get ventilation down here, you set those air doors in certain strategic parts of the mine. You can open them and close them and change the direction of the air to the part of the mine you want it to go to. That's what it is. So why would you work in those kind of conditions?
Pays well.
Yeah, the pay was awesome. It's no other reason. No romantic reasons like my granddaddy worked here or something. He might have, and he might still, but he didn't do it for any romantic reasons either. So I'm going to touch on that for a minute and then we're going to move on. The miners were all paid from about 1968 to 75 when they shut the mines down. The miners were all paid $45 a day per man. That was base pay. The guys working in here, 4 guys, 2 guys on days and 2 guys on nights. The company set a standard for them to move so many tons of rock out of here in a 2-week pay period. If they exceeded that standard, each man got $10 a ton over the standard. That doesn't sound like much for a ton of rock, but I'm here to tell you a ton of rock is nothing. 2 guys can load a ton of rock even by hand in just a couple of minutes. It's hard work, but mining's hard work. So you got another kind of miner, and he's called a raised miner. That's that mannequin up there on the wall. Up there somewhere. There he is. He's my brother-in-law. He's on community service. I told you there's 7 levels in this mine. His job is to cut a tunnel straight up through all those levels above it. That way when those guys blast up there, they don't have to carry their rock down the side of a mountain and then around to the other side of the mountain to the crushing mill. Those 4 levels above us can break their rock and drop it vertically right down to this level, load it in ore cars right there and pull it out the front door. He's also paid $45 a day, but the standard set for his crews to move straight up 6.5 feet a day. If they exceeded that, and they usually did, each foot earned each man $100 per foot in bonus money. Drift miners or cross-cut miners are the guys that cut the tunnel and lay the track for transportation between one ore body to the next. 4-man crew, $45 a day per man. Their standard was 7 feet a day, straight through this rock. They usually went 15 because that's the length of a track. And that's the standard those guys set for themselves, but the company standard was 7 feet. Anything over 7 feet earned each man $100 per foot. So $900 a month, add about $5,000 on top of that in bonus money. And 75.
Yeah.
Got a guy 2 years out of high school.
Yeah.
So
What was minimum wage back then? Any idea? I
yeah.
remember making 50 cents babysitting.
If I remember right, minimum wage was like, it was like 280 or something back in the 70s. I mean, I worked at KFC.
225 for me in 78.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it was big money. Hey, let's get back on the train, folks. We've got another stop to make. 1,000 feet, maybe 1,100 feet underground right now. If y'all please step off on this side of the train and follow me down this drift back here. We got a bunch of stuff to show you.
Nice timber work.
Start right about there and let's just take up this wall right here. All right, start with, well, welcome to the 93 crosscut on the third level of the Queen Mine. That's what this is called, 93 crosscut. These mountains are named the Mule Mountains, folks, and the reason for that is up until about 1920, in order to move these carts full of broken rock, they used mules. They trained them on the surface to pull 4 of these cars at a time. This is called an A car. Weighs about 1,500 pounds empty, and it carries about 1,500 pounds of ore. Now, the mules were trained to pull 4 of these and to walk between the tracks and not step off one side or the other, because you don't want to pull these off a rail. If you get them down on the dirt, they're really hard to get back on. Funny thing about the mules, I was telling you how the miners got paid. They got paid their bonus money for moving more rock than what the company required. So they were always greedy for that bonus money. Every now and then, they take a 5th or a 6th car and snap it on the back of this 4-car mule train. Get the mule standing up and walking down the rails. When they'd feel that chain pop tight on the 5th car, they'd back up and sit down. They wouldn't pull. They said it was the first underground union. So about 1920, they got rid of the mules. By the way, the mules lived down here, folks. They didn't take them back up to the surface at the end of the day or at the end of a week. Or they lived down here for sometimes a year at a time, or even more than that, until their eyes started going bad. That's when they would take them to the surface. They would correct their eyesight, and then they gave those mules away. They didn't bring them back down here. So about 1920, they brought electric carts down here, electric motors to pull these cars with. Outside of our building, next to the chain link fence, right there by the parking lot, there's one of those motors. It's a big black one, number 46. It has a wooden trolley arm standing up on it. I could pull 20 of these cars at 40 miles an hour, fully loaded. Now, that trolley arm is just like a San Francisco trolley car, and it hooked to this wire right here. This is an uninsulated copper wire carrying 240 volts of direct current, folks. Not alternating current. Direct current will just flat blow you out of your boots, especially that much of it. But remember how wet it is down here? So you're probably standing about ankle deep in water, right underneath that wire. And this is the tool they give you to work with. It's a long steel bar. See where I'm going? It took some lives, folks. That killed some men. It didn't kill everybody that touched it. The guy that I normally work with, he's up in the building right now. He worked 20 years underground, and he touched that wire once and survived it. And I only know one other guy other than him that did. But he said it welded the bar to the wire immediately. He was in the Campbell mine, and he reached out and got one of these called a shoot bar, threw it over his shoulder and turned around to walk away and hit that wire. He said it welded the bar to the wire, burned him pretty good, but it knocked him down into the water ditch, and he said he laid down there in that hot water thinking about his life because he knew he survived something that most people don't. If you ever make a mistake with high voltage and survive it, you're probably not going to make that mistake again. It's a pretty hard lesson to learn. I got shot with a taser, man. We're not going to go into all the arguable details about that. But the point I'm trying to make is it only happened to me once. Hey, remember that guy that cut that raised miner that cuts that tunnel straight up? This is the bottom of it, folks. This is called a raise. A lot of people call them chutes or pockets. It isn't 4 separate raises. It's one great big raise that goes all the way up through the levels above us. And when those guys up there drop their rock down, it's going to back up behind these roller doors. And they hired, it was pretty much not always, but pretty much an entry-level job. Some guys that had a lot of years underground became swampers. That's what these guys are called to load these cars. And but mostly it was guys right out of high school, and they're inexperienced in their job. One of them is going to be standing out here on a wooden platform they're going to build with a long bar called a cheater, and it's for leverage. And he's going to reach across over here and slide it on over these roller doors and roll these doors open and fill these cars. But don't touch that wire. Now, yeah, you know, and you don't want to open that door very far either. What if you got 700 tons of rock standing up there? You'll never get the door closed again. So you want to open it up just enough to where your partner can get underneath the door with that chute bar and manage that rock and gouge it out from underneath there and get it in here, and don't get a rock flow going. If that rock starts flowing out of there, it's just going to bury you. You'll never close that door again. But the biggest problem with these raises is those guys are working up there. There's 4 levels up there, and a lot of crews, and they're constantly dropping 30 and 40 tons of wet, muddy, mucky, hot rock on that pile. And it's going to pack down in there sooner or later, and you could open this door and nothing would come out but that copper water, that real sulfuric water. And it happened a few times. It is documented. See, these guys are under a lot of pressure to move this rock because it's everybody else's bonus money, right? If the rock sticks in here and they can't get it out, nobody's making bonus money until that rock starts moving again. And if the miners aren't making bonus money, welcome to Dairy Queen, kid, because that's where you're going to be working next week. They'll run you off. So a couple of times they did this. They took some of this side lagging. It's 2x12 timber called lagging. It's 5 feet long, and put it across the top of one of these cars and stand up in that hole with the chute bar and try to knock that rock loose. Pretty sure way to kill yourself, right? But there's a solution to stuck rock, and I'm gonna show it to you. I think it's really cool. I think you'll like it too. This is it. Is that cool or what? Right?
I was wondering if they would blast it.
You betcha. That's what you do. Take a stick of dynamite, tape it to a loading stick. You're going to push a blasting cap in there. And it's already been crimped to a 12-foot black powder fuse called a spitter because they spit sparks. It's 12 feet long and it burns 1 foot every 40 seconds. So you can lodge it up underneath that stuck rock down there, cut most of that thing off. Light the fuse and get out, man, but don't forget to close the door. And you're going to walk off in separate directions. That's called guarding your shot. You're going to prevent anybody from walking in front of it in case you blow the doors off. Hopefully that's going to knock all that rock loose and you can start making money again. If it doesn't work, go back to the powder magazine and get more and come back and keep doing it until it works, because it's the only safe way to do it. Plus, it's really cool. And now, when we closed for COVID, like 6.5 years ago or whatever that was, they sent all of us tour guides home because we're just part-time employees. We didn't have any guests. I mean, the gates were locked. But we have a full-time staff. It's the ladies that work in the gift shop and in our administrative, like timekeepers and all that sort of thing. And it was all ladies, except for one guy, and he's not with us anymore. I mean, he didn't die, he just doesn't work here anymore. But, and those women, they were all aged from 21 years old to grandmothers. The boss brought them down here and put them to work because they didn't have anything to do up there. And did you see all those brand new timbers as we were coming down the last part of the tunnel down here? They did that. Those are 12x12s, folks. That's not messing around. That is hard manual work. But in order to properly set timbers, you got to do some blasting too, and they did that too.
All right.
They blasted about 100 tons of rock out of here and took it out of the mine and reset all those new timbers. And I was like, I didn't even know they were working down here. I came back after 2 months and I was like, man, I was the proudest old dude in town. But see, they're nuts about rocks because they're in the rock business, right? To the point of being kind of weird, if you ask me. If you come to a rock miner and ask him, hey, mister, what kind of rock do I have right here? Most likely he's going to tell you, I don't know and I don't care. So I'm not paid by the quality of the rock, right? I'm paid by the ton or by the foot. But they're in the business of buying and selling rocks, and they do it by tons. And so they know everything about it. So, and all these tunnels are interconnected down here. So they got to wandering around, and they put together a little static display for you here. I'm not gonna get into any geology or anything like that. It's boring and I don't care much for it. But, yeah, I mean, you can see in some of this rock, there's all this malachite and azurite, and then there's some pyrite right here. But what I wanted to show you was some of this local calcite. If I could ask you to take your lights and hold them up against your body and black us out here, I can't ask you to turn them out because those should get after me. But take a look at this. They call this Bisbee ice. Isn't that pretty?
Cool.
All right, that's all I know about rocks, so let's move on. Come on down this way. Watch your head on this door, please.
Air door
It's
here.
gonna take up all this space right here. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on drills, folks, because we kinda already talked about them up in the Stope. And a drill is a drill is a drill, but this is just like a display of the evolution of these pneumatic drills. That green one right there, they call them widowmakers because they did not have water running through them, and nobody's used them in about 100 years. But this is what everybody's pretty much using nowadays. This is called a Gardner Denver jackleg. It's also a pneumatic drill. It runs on about 200 pounds of compressed air. It's got water running all the way through it. But not only is that compressed air turning your drill steel, but there's a air piston in this jackleg. And that leg stretches out 8 feet long, and that air is constantly pushing on it. So you don't have to lean on this drill or push it. It pushes itself. You gotta hang on to them, and they're really loud. But you do have to hang on to them, because I mean, it's kind of a violent thing you're doing right there, drilling back into rock. They tend to want to dance away. This is how you control the water, and this is simply your drill speed. Has anybody ever heard of an actor named Aidan Quinn? Well, nobody? He's Anthony Quinn's son. He's like an action movie kind of actor. He was down here like a year and a half ago filming a scene to a movie. And the movie's still in studio now. And we get a lot of that. We get like movie scenes and travel shows and documentaries, and commercials. We've done weddings down here. Weird, that's kind of an ominous thing. 1,000 feet underground. But anyway, and I'm not making fun of anybody. I wouldn't do it. That's not my nature. But it's just a little unusual. But we get people that want to come down here and look for ghosts. And they come from all over the world. And we had some in from Norway a couple of years ago, and they had gadgets with lights on them, and they're looking for spirits. And those guys always want to come down in the middle of the night. We're like, what's the difference? Anyway, if you ever see a movie with Aidan Quinn drilling a hole in a rock, it was this drill right here, and it was that hole right there. They had air and water to it, and the makeup guys had him all muddy and dirty. But man, he's got that water pouring out of the hole, and the throttle thrown forward, and he's working this rock. I wasn't here, but nobody bothered to tell him, I guess, and he didn't ask. But there's not a miner in the world that's going to straddle this jacket. Enough said. Yeah, if that stinger was to skip, like I said, these things want to rock and roll. If that stinger skips at 200 pounds, it's immediately going to jump up as high as your drill steel, and then it's going 8 feet long with you on it. And then your drill's going to start spinning. So yeah, you don't want to stand over it. Any questions on drilling? Let's get to
strictly for the dynamite holes, or?
Yeah. Let's get to that right now. We'll talk about blasting. Come on down here. I know it's kind of close, but we're just going to take up this space right here. I usually mention this out in the train yard before we come underground, but this mine's a little bit unusual in this camp in that this is the only mine that you came in on a train. In all the other mines, you got into a cage hanging from a head frame, or it's called a gallus frame, actually. It's a big A-frame structure. Hanging from that is a cage on an electric winch, and that's the cage. It's just an elevator car, and it does an elevator car. And they're gonna drop you vertically straight down to whichever level you're going to. Now, once you get off of that, you might have to get on one of these little trains underground and travel, say, another mile underground to get to your work site. And when you get there, what's the first thing you gotta do is you gotta move about 30 or 40 tons of rock that your brother-in-law left for you on the prior shift, right? That's the last thing he did was blast. So once you get that rock out of your way, if you have to set timbers, the two of you are gonna do that. And you're gonna get air and water back here, get a machine mounted, and spend the rest of your day doing this. This is a blast face typical of the size of a mine that we're in and the time that we're talking about. You're gonna drill 26 holes back in there, 7 feet deep, and you're gonna fill 22 of them with about 220 sticks of dynamite. Awesome. Now, why'd you drill 26 holes? If you're only gonna pack 22 of them, that's a waste of time, isn't it? It's called expansion, folks. Remember, you're trying to break this all the way back in there 8 feet into pieces 8 to 10 inches. Simply stated, I don't care how much dynamite you cram in those holes. If you don't give the rock room to move, it won't break. You have to give it a little bit of room to move, or under pressure, it won't fracture. All that energy will shoot right back out this dynamite hole in the form of fire, like a shotgun blast, and your rock will still be standing there. So you're gonna load 22 holes and cut 22 fuses, so you have 22 separate explosions about a second apart, but this is the first one to go. This little pattern right here is called a 5-hole burn. When that round fires with 12 or 14 sticks of dynamite in it, it's gonna break into those 4 empty holes all the way back there. You just gave it room to move and you fractured the rock. A second later, that round's gonna fire, and that's gonna break down into that little space. Then that one's gonna break up, then the breast holes are gonna start firing. The cutters and the skimmers are gonna start firing, and in about 30 seconds, you broke all that rock in there, but it's still in there. The last rounds to shoot are those along the floor. They're called lifters, and when the lifters fire, that's gonna dump all that rock right out here into a big old pile. You and your partner are gonna get on the cage, you go to the surface. 4 hours later, here comes your brother-in-law. Now he's got to move your rock and start the whole process over, right? So let me show you how you do it. I wish. I was messing with our props. So we'll call this a stick of dynamite. Now, all dynamite is sawdust or wood pulp, and they saturate that with a liquid high explosive called nitroglycerin. On its own, nitroglycerin is very unstable, so that's how they stabilize it, is with that wood pulp. And then they just wrap it up real tight in wax paper. It's just a big old firecracker, a big energy generator. So grab you a stick of dynamite, poke a hole in it with your pocket knife, and push that blasting cap in there that's already attached to a 12-foot spitter. You're gonna tape it on both ends with electrical tape. Load it in the hole and push it back with a wooden loading stick so you don't create any sparks or static. And you'll do that 22 times with 1 stick of dynamite, cap and a fuse in each one of those holes. Reach back in the box and get more dynamite out, and get your pocket knife out again, and this time you wanna rip the skin on it. That wax paper, just tear right through it. Put it in behind that first round and push it back up against that round, and then step into it and crush it with your loading stick. That's why you want to break the packaging on it. You'll do that again and again and again, all the way out to the face, in all 22 holes. Now, you wanted those 22 separate explosions, right? But all the fuses are exactly the same length. So it sounds like a lot of math, right? To get those 22 separate explosions a second apart. It's not, it's simple, or I couldn't do it. 12-foot fuse, called a spitter. This is called a spitter board. If this is gonna be your first shot to go, you're gonna wanna cut about 18 inches off of this, and you'll see why. Once you get it cut, load it in the spitter board. Now, take that piece that you cut off, don't throw it down, use it. Use it as a tool to help you measure and cut your second shot to be a 1/2 inch longer than your first one, and load it in the spitter board. Take that piece that you cut off and do the same thing Measure and cut your third shot to be ½ inch longer than your second shot and load it in the board, and that's how you load the whole face. So now it's time to light them off, right? But you've been down here 8 hours, you're soaking wet, you're standing in water, you're dripping water on you. Your partner's walking around with a water hose washing everything down, because if the boss walks in and you're working in a dust cloud, you're likely to get some time off. That's how serious they took the silicosis problem. The point I'm trying to make is you're not going to light that with a big lighter from Circle K. You're going to use a torch and light one of these. It's called a spitter rod, and it's coated in magnesium. This burns at 1200 degrees for about 50 seconds. So once you get it lit, just start touching off your fuses until you get all 22 of them smoking, and then you can snap that board off your fuses and let them free hang. Just throw that stuff down right there and walk off and guard your shot. You both have to stay close enough to it that you both count 22 shots. So let's say I walked off down here and I counted 22, but my partner went off down there and he counted 21, which is 21. You always err on the side of safety. Or you both counted 21, doesn't matter. It's called a missed hole. If you didn't get them, if you didn't count all 22, it's called a missed hole. And you can't come back in and fix that now because the air is fouled, right, from the nitroglycerin. So you're gonna get on the cage and go to the surface, go to the boss's office, and report it to the company where you were. Hey, boss, me and Sean just came out of 93 crosscut on the 3rd level, and we got a missed hole down there. That way in 4 hours, when your brother-in-law steps off the cage, he's not swinging a pickaxe on a pile of rock that's got dynamite in it. He knows to look for it, right? And it'll be easily found. It's gonna be bigger than the rest of them. And all you gotta do to solve that problem is stick a water hose in there and wash out all that paper and sawdust that you crushed. It'll wash right out, and the nitroglycerin will become inert. Get a hold of your spitter for your primary round and pull that stick of dynamite out of there and pull the plastic cap out of it to make it safe. That's how it's done. Any questions on blasting? All right, let's move into that big room right there. Miners got paid for moving tons of rock, right? And I said a ton of rock is not a lot. Well, it's not. This is an H cart, and there's a ton of rock right there, folks. Even loading it by hand, 2 guys can load this up pretty quick. I mean, it's hard work. Now, I showed you malachite, azurite, pyrite, calcite. Do we have any rock nuts in here? Maybe you can tell me anyway if you can find the right one. You can use your lights if you want. Can anybody tell me what kind of rock that is? It's called leverite. Just leave it right there. It doesn't have any copper in it. $14. So they used to load these by hand and with square point shovels, but in the 1950s, the Finley Corporation came out with this piece of equipment, and all it is a front end loader, folks. You can see it's got a loading bucket on the front. It rolls on rails. It's powered by compressed air. You as an operator are going to stand here. This is reverse and this is forward. It's very simple to operate. They're not fast, but they're really strong. You can push that bucket up against a pile of rock and maybe use a shovel or two to make sure it's nice and full. Throw that handle right there and the bucket it'll right itself and come back here. It takes about 20 seconds and 2 or 3 scoops to fill up an H cart with a ton of rock. And there goes bonus money. So you're the new guy. Today's your first day underground. You got your new shiny hard hat on and your new company store lunchbox that you probably hadn't paid for yet. You're 2,500 feet underground, you don't have a clue what's going on. I mean, who would, right? Very foreign environment. But you're not feeling good. Now, you can't go to the cage station and ring a bell for the cager or the hoisting engineer to drop your cage down 2,500 feet to take you up to the bathroom. What they do? Right behind us there. This is called a sanitation car. I don't believe anybody ever called it that, but we're a family show, so we do. Use your imagination. My first observation about this is I believe it's over-engineered because it's got 2 seats on it. Right? There wasn't no 2 miners ever sat on this at the same time. Say it ain't so, Mom. Now, they're gonna park this as far away from any work site as they can, just due to the nature of the beast, right? But they're gonna park it down the darkest, hottest, wettest, most uncomfortable tunnel they can find to discourage anybody from spending any real leisure time on it, right? Get back to work. Now, these tunnels are cut at a 2% grade going up, so the groundwater can run down the ditch to the pumps and you can get the water out of the mine. So when they park this on that 2% grade, they're gonna have to put a rock or a wooden wedge or something under one of the wheels so it doesn't roll away. Sooner or later, there's gonna be that new guy. He's gonna come to one of these miners and say, "Hey, mister, how do you take care of business down here?" He'll say, "Son, come with me." He's gonna walk him around a little while and introduce him to all the guys and, until he's really uncomfortable. And then walk him down that dark tunnel and get him back to this thing. But, make him comfortable, get his light and his tools and put them aside. And, but you're not gonna stick around. I mean, give the poor guy some privacy. So when you walk away, kick that rock out from underneath the wheel. Now he's rolling down the tunnel in the dark with his pants down around his ankles. Reconsidering his last career move, probably. And they're gonna wait for him to get going pretty good, and then somebody will step out and holler at him, "Hey kid, all you gotta do is set that brake." Well, they don't have brakes. That's why you put a rock down there. This is the valve that dumps it. And so that was one of the initiation for the new guys. Or they'd put a blasting cap in your lunchbox and blow up your bologna sandwich. So June 14th, 1975, Phelps Dodge was the owner of these mines in that day. That was the day they shut them all down in one day. All 28 mines, they shut the gates.
Wow.
And it wasn't like a surprise to anybody. Everybody knew it was coming. For over a year, the company even hired most of the miners in town to move to other mining towns and take up jobs there, places like Mammoth and Samuel and Morenci. And the guys packed their families up and they left Bisbee. And then all the businesses started closing because nobody had any money to spend. So all the merchants, they packed their families up and they moved out of town too. And that's what happens to company towns when the ore runs out, folks. They turn into ghost towns because of the only industry. The only thing that created towns like this was mining. There's nothing else. So when the industry left, everything started shutting down. People were locking the doors and walking away. And Bisbee was quickly becoming a ghost town. They called it Dog Town for a couple of years because there wasn't enough traffic to chase the dogs out of the streets. But it was 1975, and a lot of you were around back then. That was kind of my time, and it was a special time, if you ask me. But something really cool happened that hadn't happened before, really. Here came the hippies, and they came by the VW busload from all over the world, man. And with them, they brought painting and sculpture and food and music and all kinds of art and what have you. And they brought all their talents to a place where they were accepted. And they rebuilt the town. They absolutely saved this beautiful Victorian little town. And they're still here, and they're still hippies, and they're still cool, and they're old. But that's what we are right now. And I got to tell you, this is a wonderful little town to live in. And had they not done that, had you not become our new industry, we couldn't live here. And this is a small town living, and it's just like that. You go to the store and people stop you in the parking lot and ask you about your family, that sort of thing. And you used to could go to the barbershop and drink beer if you wanted to. You can't do it anymore. But it's just that it's like Mayberry, but here they say it's like Mayberry on acid. So anyway, thanks for coming to town, folks, and thanks for taking my tour. It's my pleasure to do this. I just enjoyed it so much. But hope you enjoyed the tour, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
We're here at the Lavender Pit, just outside of Bisbee. This is a big, huge open pit copper mine. Started in 1917 and closed in 1975. In total, they took over 8 billion pounds of copper, 2 million ounces of gold, over 300 million ounces of silver, a bunch of lead, and a bunch of zinc out of this pit and the surrounding mines. And over there in the distance, some of the old mill buildings. All right, well, we'll end our tour here where we started, back at the Lavender Pit. If you guys are ever in Bisbee, Arizona, stop by and take the tour, because it is really, really cool. And thanks to Bisbee for keeping all of the historical stuff going and giving tours, because it is a big part of the history of the U.S. and of Arizona. So thanks to all you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.